Well, hi everybody, welcome back to Suburban Homesteader Wyoming. And today on How Cheap Can I Live, I'm going to talk about meat cuts. Because if you can understand the cuts of meat before you purchase them, it can really stretch your dollar. Because meat is probably your largest portion of your food bill. And so that is why you really need to understand where that cut of meat comes from. If it's from a cow, a pork, chicken, and how you can use that, how you should really cook that so you get delicious food and you get the best price for what you're doing. Before we really dive into today's subject, will you click that subscribe button, ring the bell so you know when I have videos, and like this video. And I think you will get a lot of good information on how cheap can I live. Now, hopefully you can live by some place where there's a local farmer. You can buy directly from the farmer. If not, consider your local shops. Consider what they have to offer. Or maybe your town actually even has a butcher shop. That way you can ask questions, you can learn from them, and they may have some suggestions on how to cook that cut of meat. Maybe you raise your own. You have chickens or rabbits or pigs, cows, goats, sheep. You have those on your property, and if you know how to butcher, how to use those cuts of meat, it can be really economical for you. But our main focus today is on cuts of meat and what you need to know about those to save on your food bill. How you can take one cut of meat and use it for many different meals. And if you know how to carve those meats, it's even better for you. You can really stretch that piece of meat out so that you can have it on multiple meals. So when you look at a beef chart, it will show you all these different sections that they cut. The shoulder, the butt, the rib. But from those cuts, they actually make multiple cuts. So let's look at my old cookbook. One of the benefits of having an old cookbook is that they will give you a lot of information. Like this page is a beef chart, and it has all the different parts that you would see in a diagram of cuts of beef, except for then it takes it and it breaks down. So if you had a round, it's going to show you all the different cuts that they get from that round, from hamburger to round steak. If you didn't know where, say, a ribeye came from, what part of the meat did a ribeye come from? So you can look at, and this is the rib cut. You also get a round rib roast, a standing rib roast, and a ribeye steak. And it also tells you the best way to cook that. Like the ribeye is a broil, but I use the barbecue. You're going to roast it. It's just really helpful. And a lot of times in these old cookbooks, they'll go through all the different cuts of meat. A lamb chart, pork chart, veal chart. So you know where everything is coming from. So in turn, you know if you need to slow cook that, if you can just grill it real fast, what you need to do. And they'll have sections on cooking meat. And it just gives you really a lot of information. Now, besides beef and pork, probably the largest other group that people buy is poultry. Now, we first of all think of chickens, but don't forget, like, guineas. People used to eat pigeons all the time. They call it squab. And you may have your game birds, turkeys. And a lot of times we'll just buy a turkey breast or a chicken breast. But if you would buy the whole chicken, you can get so many more meals out of it. And usually the whole chicken is at a different price than what you would pay for like breasts or legs or thighs. In fact, I just bought a huge chicken and we cooked it up last night. It was almost 8 pounds. It used to be that when you bought a broiler or a fryer, you would get it at 3 or 4 pounds. But the way that they raise chickens now, they get lots more meat off of it. But you can have your cuts of chicken that are what they call brown meat or white meat. Now Joe preferences the dark meat, the brown meat. But if I buy a whole chicken and then afterwards I use the breast in salads or a wrap or with some rice, he likes it that way. He just always thinks that a breast can be a little drier than the dark meat. But when you're raising chickens, or if you are buying, say, a broiler, that's a chicken that's up to 14 weeks. A fryer is usually 14 weeks to 20 weeks. A roaster is usually 5 to 9 months, so it's much larger. So depending on what you want to do with that poultry, you buy accordingly. And one of the things that you always want to look when you're buying a whole chicken, does the skin look smooth, soft? Is there a shine to it? Look for those things. Now, another thing that people don't always consider is fish. Now you have your regular fish that you would buy in a store. You may have a lake or stream by you, and so that you can go fishing yourself. There's seafood cuts. If you live on the coast, you are open to a whole bunch of more seafood than if you live in the middle of the country. If you're not a fisherman, maybe you have a neighbor or a friend who is, in which you could barter. And so those are just things to think about. And don't forget things that you can just grow easily in the smallest of lot is meat rabbits. And you can go through that whole process, and that can give you a lot of protein for your family. But if you cannot raise it, your first line is always buying locally. You know, you can look on social media. Sometimes there's ads in the paper. You can talk to friends. Do you know anybody who raises cattle? Do they butcher them? Can I buy a quarter of a beef, a half a beef? And so that you're getting a larger quantity at a better price. And of course, there's game animals, deer, elk, antelope, things like that. Things that you can, if you are a hunter, you can get, or if you know somebody who is, you may barter with them. A cutting board, I would suggest out of wood or a plastic one that you only cut meat on. You don't use it for anything else. And you're cleaning it after every single time you're cutting it. The next thing you need is a good set of knives. Now you may not need a huge set of knives, but you certainly need a few really good sharp knives. Ones that will cut a steak, ones that will cut a roast, to bone away on a chicken, to cut your fillet of fish. You need a good set of knives. Now when you understand the cuts, where they come from, how you can use them, you have your kitchen supplies, your knives, your cutting board, you have your cookbook, then it's really a matter of taking those cuts of meat and how can you stretch them. So I made a chicken last night. I roasted it in the oven, and we ate the leg and part of the thigh. Joe and I both did. Now today I will take that and I'll take all of the meat off of it. Then I will take what's left, the carcass, and put it in a big pot and boil that so I can have some broth so that I can make soup. And then you can get the rest of the meat that's so much harder to get off before then. And I can make a soup with that part. With all the different meat I pulled off, there's a lot of things I can do. I can make a rice dish. I can make wraps. I can make sandwiches. I can put pieces of chicken on top of my salads. And so out of that one chicken, I can get anywhere from 5 to 10 meals out of that. And I paid $1.17 a pound for that chicken. It was almost 8 pounds. It was huge, huger than most of them I've ever seen. And to get 8 or 10 meals out of that, when it cost me around $8 and some cents, that is a very good economical bargain. And so when we look at our meat, by buying a roast versus just a steak. You can take that chuck roast and slice it and make chuck steaks out of it. Think about it before you just cook it all together. Do I want to cook it whole and then pull it apart like I did on the chicken? Or is it better for me to say take that roast, slice it, and use it as steaks for a lot of different meals? You have to think about those things before you start. Another thing I can do with parts of the chicken or parts of beef, pork, is make kebabs. It's a very economical way. It's really fun. People always love them, and you're using a lot of vegetables and say pineapple with it, and you're cooking it on the grill. You're not using that much meat, but it's really a filling, satisfying meal. You can make it a family affair, and you can have your kids helping you. Now, I wouldn't suggest they use the knives, but they could wash the vegetables. They can set the table. They can, say, pull broccoli apart, even if it's a small one, so that they're adding to the ritual of dinner. And it can make it very special. Now, on those special holidays, Valentine's Day, a lot of times we go out to dinner. We want to treat our spouse. We want to have that special romantic dinner. And in fact, Joe asked me, do you want to go out to dinner on Valentine's Day? And of course I said, no. I never go out on the actual holiday. One, it's way too busy. You don't get the service you want, and your food is never prepared the way it should be because they're just too busy. It's too rushed. But instead of spending $100, you're both having steaks, you have something to drink, you have a dessert, you have a tip, you're spending $100 or more, depending on where you go. Why not go to the butcher shop or to a store that you really trust their meats and buy a couple great ribeye steaks? Might cost you $25. And you can enjoy it. You can set the table with candles. You can set the mood. It can be fabulous. And you can take that $75 you would have spent and buy something else or save it. And you will enjoy it just as much. Maybe you go to the movies. Maybe you go for a long stroll afterwards. But it's a way to be more economical and still have a wonderful time. Now, I hope that you do some research. I hope that you can really break it down on cuts of meat. And if you're interested on me doing just a video on beef cuts and what to do with them, or chicken, all the different parts, what to do with them, let me know, because I can do that. And I hope you enjoyed How Sheep Can I Live. And you really take the time to look at the cuts of meat, the prices that they're charging, and what you can do with each of those. And I will see you next time.